The night sky over Veridian 3, a colony teetering on the edge of the Andron cluster, pulsed with an eerie green glow. It wasn't uncommon. Settlers had spent years under its shifting light, dismissing it as one of the planet's atmospheric quirks. But tonight, it moved differently. Adrian Kyros leaned against the observation deck railing, his sharp hazel eyes following the streak of green fire cutting through the heavens. It wasn't debris. It moved too deliberately. "Proximity alert. Impact imminent," the automated system announced, jolting him from his thoughts. His hand instinctively brushed the sidearm at his hip. "Impact zone?" he asked aloud, though he already suspected the answer. "Quadrant 7, the AI replied in its monotone. Adrian clenched his jaw. Quadrant 7, the cursed forest. No one went there anymore, not after the original survey team vanished 5 years ago. People whispered about it when they thought no one was listening. Strange shadows, flickering lights, voices that weren't human. He shook the thoughts away. He didn't have time for superstition. "Kyros," Commander Varick's voice barked through his comm. "Get a team to that crash site. I want eyes on it now." Adrian's stomach tightened, but he nodded. Understood. It didn't take long for his team to assemble. Corporal Lane, the sharp-tongued sniper who always seemed 2 steps ahead of everyone, and Private Torres, a jittery rookie who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. They trekked out toward the forest in tense silence, their boots crunching against brittle alien vegetation. "You ever feel like the air here clings to you?" Lane muttered as they neared the forest's edge. Adrian knew what she meant. The air seemed thicker here, heavier, like walking through invisible cobwebs. As they pushed deeper, the hum of their equipment crackled with static. The crash site appeared suddenly, a scorched clearing in the forest where the ground was blackened in a perfect circle. In the center lay the object, a sleek metallic craft, black as obsidian and pulsing faintly with green light. Its surface shimmered like liquid, reflecting their outlines in distorted shapes. Adrian's breath caught in his throat as a low, resonant hum vibrated through the air. "What is that?" Torres whispered, his voice trembling. Lane stepped closer, her lips parting slightly as if drawn to the craft's hypnotic glow. Adrian grabbed her shoulder, his voice low and firm. "Don't touch it. We don't know what we're dealing with." Before anyone could react, a piercing sound ripped through the clearing, and the craft's smooth surface split open with a hiss. Mist poured out, thick and iridescent, carrying the scent of something sweet, yet metallic. Adrian raised his rifle. "Stay back!" But then she stepped out. A figure emerged from the mist, her silhouette backlit by the green glow of the craft. Her skin shimmered faintly, a silver-blue hue that seemed to radiate light. Long, metallic strands of hair flowed over her shoulders, glinting in the dim light, and her eyes, black as the void, locked onto Adrian's with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. He froze. She was alien, but something about her felt magnetic, like a gravity he couldn't resist. Her movements were fluid, graceful, and deliberate. "Help!" Her voice was soft, melodic, and raw with exhaustion. She staggered forward, her gaze never leaving his. Adrian stepped toward her instinctively, his fingers twitching against the rifle's grip. Lane grabbed his arm. "Sir, we don't know if she's injured," Adrian said, cutting her off. He lowered his weapon and reached out. The woman collapsed against him, her body light yet warm, and he felt an odd sensation radiating from her touch, like static electricity prickling his skin. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice barely audible. Her fingers brushed his neck, and Adrian's breath hitched at the unexpected intimacy of the gesture. He shook himself out of the moment. "We need to get her back to base," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. As the team carried her out of the clearing, Adrian couldn't shake the feeling that her touch had left a mark deeper than just on his skin. The journey back to the colony was a blur. Adrian couldn't shake the strange pull he felt toward the alien woman, her weight resting lightly against his shoulder. Even as his team walked in tense silence every so often, he glanced down at her, her silvery blue skin glowing faintly in the dark, her long lashes fluttering like she was caught between sleep and wakefulness. "She could be dangerous, you know," Lane muttered as they reached the perimeter. "She's injured," Adrian said firmly, though his own voice sounded defensive. "Until we know more, we treat her like anyone else who needs help." Torres snorted nervously. "Yeah, except she's not anyone else." The medical bay was empty at this hour, the sterile lights humming softly overhead. Adrian gently lowered the woman onto a cot, his heart racing as her fingers brushed his arm. The warmth of her touch lingered, sending an inexplicable heat through his chest. "Run a scan," Adrian ordered Torres, who fumbled with the equipment. Lane stood at the door, her rifle slung across her back, watching with narrowed eyes. The woman stirred, her dark eyes fluttering open. For a moment, her gaze locked onto Adrian's, and he felt a strange pull, like she was looking straight into him, through him. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice melodic but fragile. "You're safe," Adrian replied, his tone softer than he intended. "You crashed on Veridian 3. What's your name?" She hesitated, her brow furrowing as though the question puzzled her. "I am Kaera," she said at last, her voice carrying a strange resonance that made the hairs on his arm stand up. Adrian nodded. "I'm Lieutenant Adrian Kyros. You're on the colony's northern outpost. Can you tell us what happened?" Kaera sat up slowly, her movements fluid, yet unnatural, as though she wasn't used to her own body. "My ship, it was damaged. I was fleeing." Her voice wavered, and her gaze flickered to the floor. "Fleeing from what?" Adrian asked, his tone firm but not unkind. She looked at him then, her black eyes glistening with something between fear and urgency. "You wouldn't understand." "Not yet." Before Adrian could press her further, Kaera reached out, her fingers brushing his cheek. A rush of warmth spread through him, and his vision blurred. For a moment, it felt like his entire being was suspended, his senses overwhelmed by a kaleidoscope of emotions: fear, longing, sadness, and something else. Something deeper. When the sensation subsided, Adrian staggered back, his heart hammering in his chest. What did you do to me?" he gasped. Kaera looked away, guilt shadowing her expression. "I needed to connect, to understand you. It is how my kind communicates." Adrian's head spun. Her touch had been more intimate than anything he'd ever experienced. It wasn't just physical. It was as if she'd reached into his mind, his very soul. He could still feel the faint echo of her emotions lingering in his thoughts. "Kyros!" Lane barked, pulling him out of his daze. "The scan's picking something up." Adrian turned to the monitor, where a faint signal was pulsing in the shape of a concentric circle. Kaera's expression darkened. "They've found me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Who?" Adrian demanded. But before she could answer, the ground beneath them trembled, and the distant sound of an alarm echoed through the outpost. "They're here," Kaera said, her voice low and resolute. "You must let me help you, Adrian. If they take me, they'll destroy you too." The alarm blared through the outpost, its shrill cry sending the entire colony into chaos. Adrian's blood ran cold as the ground trembled beneath his boots. Outside the medical bay, Distant voices barked orders, and the colony's defensive systems groaned to life. Kaera stood slowly, her movements unnaturally graceful despite the tension thickening in the air. Her dark eyes seemed to shimmer with an inner light. "You don't understand what's coming," she said softly, her voice laced with fear. "Then explain," Adrian snapped, gripping his rifle tightly. "If we're about to face something, I need to know what we're up against." Kaera turned to him, stepping closer until they were mere inches apart. Adrian's pulse quickened as she placed a hand gently on his chest. "They are called the Soryth," she said, her voice trembling. "Hunters, exiles. They destroy what they cannot control. I fled because I would not become one of them." Before Adrian could process her words, the sound of something metallic scraping against the outer walls of the colony made everyone freeze. Torres, who had been pacing nervously, stumbled back toward the door. "What the hell is that?" "They're already here," Kaera whispered, her gaze distant. Lane leaned against the doorway, peering outside. "Kyros, we've got movement. I count 3. No, 4 hostiles." Adrian's stomach tightened. "What do they want?" Kaera's eyes darkened. "Me. But if they can't have me, they'll kill everyone here." Adrian's breath hitched, his mind racing. They weren't prepared for this. This wasn't some rogue scavenger ship or malfunctioning drone. This was something far worse. The sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor, heavy, deliberate, metallic. Adrian raised his rifle, nodding to Lane to secure the door. "Torres, get to the command center. Tell them to prep for evac." Torres hesitated, his eyes darting between Kaera and the door. "What about you?" "We're holding them off," Adrian said firmly, though his heart pounded in his chest. Kaera stepped closer to Adrian, her voice low. "You can't fight them the way you fight each other. Your weapons won't stop them." "Then what will?" Kaera hesitated, her expression pained. "Me. I can stop them, but it will cost me everything." Adrian's eyes searched hers, and for a brief moment, the chaos outside seemed to fade. "You can't just give yourself up." "It's the only way," she replied, her hand brushing his cheek again. Adrian's breath caught. The warmth of her touch was electric, and for a brief, fleeting moment, he felt as if they were the only 2 people in the universe. "You said we're connected now," he said quietly. "That has to mean something. You don't have to do this alone." Her lips curved into a sad smile, her glowing skin dimming slightly. "You don't understand what I am, Adrian. If I stay, I will destroy them, yes, but I may destroy this place too. My power is not meant for this world." The door shuddered violently, a deep dent appearing as something pounded against it. Lane cursed under her breath, her weapon trained on the entrance. "Kyros, we're out of time." Adrian turned to Kaera, his mind a storm of conflicting emotions. "What do I have to do?" Kaera hesitated, her gaze softening as she stepped closer. "Trust me," she whispered. Before he could respond, she pulled him into a kiss, one that wasn't just a touch of lips, but a rush of energy, warmth, and light that surged through his entire being. Adrian staggered, gasping as his vision blurred. For a moment, he wasn't in the colony anymore. He was floating in a vast, infinite expanse of light, surrounded by stars and shadows that seemed alive. When he came to, Kaera's hands were glowing, her entire form radiating with an intense, otherworldly energy. She stepped toward the door as it exploded inward, revealing the Soryth. They were towering figures, their exoskeletons glinting like polished obsidian, their eyes burning with golden light. Kaera raised her hands, a shield of shimmering energy forming around Adrian and Lane. "Stay behind me," she said, her voice no longer soft but commanding, almost inhuman. The Soryth advanced, their movements slow and methodical. Their leader, a towering figure with jagged armor, spoke in a guttural, echoing voice. "Kaera, surrender, and we will spare the humans." Kaera's eyes glowed brighter, her form almost too dazzling to look at. "You lie, you always lie." Without another word, she unleashed a wave of energy that sent the Soryth leader flying back. The other hunters rushed forward, their weapons firing blasts of golden light that Kaera deflected with ease. Adrian could only watch, helpless and awestruck, as Kaera fought with a grace and ferocity that defied comprehension. The air crackled with raw power, and the room seemed to tremble as the battle raged on. But then Adrian noticed something. Kaera's glow was fading, her movements slowing. Whatever energy she was using, it was draining her. "Kaera!" he shouted, stepping forward despite the shield. "Stop! You're going to kill yourself!" She turned to him, her expression soft but resolute. "If I don't, they'll kill you. I can't let that happen." With one final burst of energy, Kaera unleashed a shockwave that sent the remaining Soryth crashing into the walls. They didn't get up. The room fell silent, save for the hum of dissipating energy. Kaera collapsed to her knees, her glow all but gone. Adrian rushed to her side, catching her before she hit the floor. "I told you," she whispered weakly, her voice barely audible. "We're connected. You'll feel it too one day." Adrian held her close, his heart breaking as her form flickered like a dying flame. "Kaera, stay with me. We'll figure this out. You're not alone." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "You've already saved me." And then the light faded, leaving only silence.